If you wouldn't want to say it to your grandmother, you probably shouldn't be saying it in a professional setting. How you shape your words and how you direct someone, how you teach, is everything. How do you deal with someone, whether it be, a CEO or a manager, or this or anything, that are bad at communication?
Hello everyone, my name is Marcin Kokott and welcome to Product Odyssey, the series where we explore how to build digital products fundamentally better. Today we are tackling some of the biggest challenge startups and scale-ups face, how to communicate effectively across growing teams and how to hire and retain the right talent. Our guest is Meade Kincke, founder and the CEO of Imperfektus, an executive advisory powerhouse helping leaders figure out where to start, how to grow, and everything in between. With 20 plus years of experience working with startups, small business owners, and Fortune 500 companies, Meade has mastered the art of aligning teams, embedding values, and making feedback loops a trusted part of organizational culture. Meade isn't just a business guru, he's also a husband, father, pilot, international speaker, gunsmith, Mensa member, master brewer, and a teacher. Basically, if James Bond need a career coach, Meade would be the guy. Meade, it's a pleasure to have you in our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always wonderful.
And I need to start with that from the top of the episode. Can you explain in an elevator pitch, what do you do in Imperfektus? What is your role?
So, in a nutshell, we're a luxury brand, but the big thing about it is it's everything that I hold dear. We wear a lot of hats, but we have organic certification going on currently for luxury foods and all the wonderful things that come with that. We have a really special offering that we're working on called the Envelope, which is, as we describe it, executive transport for those who value security. So, everyone has seen a private jet. That's all well and good, but this is an end-to-end and everything in between. So I keep busy, I think is the best way to say it.
Yeah, so many hats and so many things to ask
Yes.
from my side. But let's start from the probably the angle of your coaching.
The advisory.
Yeah, the advisory.
Yeah. So the advisory, that's our branch called the Sage, and this is basically anything C-suite that you can think, really kind of anything, whether it be a CEO is in a new arena that they haven't ever been in before, and they go, oh goodness, I've been appointed, but I haven't done this before. What do I do? And that can be really daunting, and that's where we're here to help you. Even if it's just a sounding board where you can go, I have a confidant, I have someone who can help guide me through this. If it's something where you need technical oversight, we have that. We've recently taken on a chief privacy officer who has an amazing legal background, and being able to guide anyone through, let's say the 4-letter word literally and figuratively of, oh, do you know GDPR? And you go, wow, that's not easy to do. So yeah, that's what we have as far as being able to offer assistance.
Okay, and you assist in basically without any limitations with any kind of problem that the CEO or CTO can have, right?
Really, really anything. And that's sort of like, to describe myself, I describe myself as a commando. Drop me in the jungle, give me a machete, I'll fight my way out. And I'm really, really comfortable, and everyone that are in my house are really comfortable being uncomfortable. We deal in greenfield. We don't, there's no book to read of oh, well, what do we do with this? Because we're writing the book. We're laying down the train tracks as we're riding the engine.
Right. I've listened when I was doing the research on your person. I've actually found out the presentation that you have given, the hiring with a handshake, and you're mentioning there interesting. Before jumping into hiring, actually, I wanted to touch a little bit on a different topic, and that's the communication.
Sure.
That's with our clients and with our partners, when we discuss about the communication, it's always a blurry topic, and everybody has a problem with communication. Any take from your side on what are the war stories about that?
Yeah, this is actually hilarious. We're in the middle of editing, but I gave a masterclass recently called "Communication is King," a masterclass on what to say. I couldn't make that up if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So yeah, as it turns out, it's a human issue. Like I've said this 1,000 times over. When you deal with technical things, even when you deal with like automobiles or this, you deal with any kind of mechanic, whatever that is, the boxes pretty well do what we tell them to. On the other hand, the humans, that's that real puzzle. And you go, what do you mean you didn't understand my joke in text and you thought I was threatening you? And you go, oh, we're doing this again. But that's the real thing, And like part of the masterclass is like talking about you can be funny, especially in person. And it's really difficult to be funny in person because not everyone are hilarious. I get that. But if you say, oh, okay, it's difficult to be funny, like when we're at a pub together and all of that, it is infinitely more difficult to be funny when there's no tone and you go, this is black and white. Why are they yelling at me? And you go, oh, okay, probably shouldn't type with all caps on. So
Right.
yeah, communication, huge and not easy. It's an individual thing, and like talking between teams, all of that can get ever so, as you said, muddy. And I think it's not something that is focused on heavily enough. I'll get off the soapbox. I
Right.
promise.
Are you using? Can you give us any kind of sneak peek to the to this course or the knowledge
Yeah.
there?
So yeah. A large chunk of it is, let's say, a fabricated email thread between a manager and or like head of software engineering, that kind of thing. Like you think someone who's on top and then someone who's in the middle of everything, and it's an email thread that goes back and forth. And without giving away too much, let's just say it goes as badly as you can expect it to. And the thing is, it's based in reality. So when you watch all of this and you go like, I've watched like the faces across the room, and as like I'm pausing and they're reading this email, and you can feel the shoulders closing up, and you go like, oh no, I don't like this. I don't like where I am. I don't like, and that's the thing. And I've asked the questions to people, and they've come back. Actually, they've said, well, how do you deal with someone, whether it be a CEO or a manager, or this or anything, that are bad at communication? And like the answer to the question is, well, you have two roads. Either they are rude and they don't know it, or they definitely do know and they don't care. So you have the two paths where you can go, okay, if the person is oblivious, we can talk, we can teach, we can grow together, that's fine. But if they're just rude, then and like you could feel the yeah, we all already know. And I'm saying the words that they already have in their head, but they need me to say. So
Right.
that's the kind of that.
Yeah, we've been there. All of us have seen this kind of situation.
Oh, again, it's a human condition. It's absolutely a human condition.
Do you have any kind of hints on any kind of methods that one CEO or CTO can use out of the box when they see those kind of struggles?
It's easy to get kind of blinded by tasks. It's easy to get blinded by this. It's easy to get blinded by anything. And then, you kind of have that tunnel vision focus. I think the biggest thing is, and this kind of goes back to the talk that I gave, hiring with the handshake. I'm not saying that you need to be best friends with everyone that is in your house. However, you should be able to, the thing I live by, have the pint test. If you can have a pint together and you can enjoy each other's company, genuinely enjoy each other's company, then you can, I didn't say should, can work together, And if you just straighten away detest someone, well, then you're not going to communicate well. You don't want to talk to them. It's already there. And you're not supposed to like everyone. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. So I think the biggest thing is being personable, having conversations with people, and actually almost forcefully, do not talk about work. Don't ask me about this project. What about the roadmap with this? Where are we going to be? No. How about, how is your family? How are things with you? Because guess what? If that's not okay, nothing is okay.
Right. Is it connected with like a personal contact or at least one-on-ones that you have, right? If you were talking about methods or the approach.
Well, the thing about it is, I feel like it's sort of like tools in a drawer. You don't want to use a biscuit cutter for everything. Like when you look at biscuit cutter houses and you go, they're all the same, they all look the same, they all have no flavor. What the big thing I always use is what works for, me and you. Maybe it's a video call. Maybe me and John, it's a phone call. Maybe, me and this one, it's going to be an email. And I think being flexible on what works for, say, you and an individual is one thing. And then also looking at what works in a group setting. And also really there figuring out like, okay, kind of like a university classroom. Once you've hit, 12 in a room, no one are really talking. You have groups that break out and all of this kind of stuff. So, when you say like, oh, giant company, and you have 200 people on a video call, like a remote company, you don't have 200 people on the call. You have a bunch of people that are not active, that are not speaking to each other. And it's a lecture. And if you want to have a lecture, that's fine. Just label it as such, but don't pretend or masquerade that it's going to be a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big one.
Right. Do you also suggest like if I'm at least in the small company, that's not a problem, right? But as soon as I'm scaling up,
No.
I'm having like a 20 different direct reports that I'm talking with. Should I talk with everybody? Should I have a direct contact and communication with everybody, or is it different structure that you advise?
I feel like this is me. I feel yes, because otherwise, again, going back to the how is everything at home, even if it's just a 2-minute thing of, hey, how are you? It doesn't need to be a big formal drawn out, tirade, but just seeing someone as opposed to like, a message in Slack or Matrix or whatever it may be, it pulls back some of the connection. It's obviously like we're talking remote work, but it's not the same thing as being where you're sharing the same air as someone, and there's a lot to be said about that. And I've been dealing remotely for ages, but when you talk about hiring, it's not for everyone to work in a room. We can talk about this and say this is natural. It's not. Like, picture if a bear walked into this room at the moment and said, why are you speaking to a black box? What is this thing? It wouldn't make any sense. And humans kind of accept that this weird video game is part of life, but it is. It's just a weird video game,
Right.
So I think that's a huge thing, is like, does this work for you? Do you get it? And kind of trying to close the gap of, if we're actually in the same room together. Obviously, you're not going to do that being global all the time, but do as much as you can to draw it closer.
Okay. Can I ask you from the practical approach, if you would be actually advising right now entering a company, let's assume mid-sized company, right? So the company that went through this 5-10 people up to, let's say, 20-50, and you see that the communication is not working, whatever we'll call it. What are your first step? What is your assessment? Are you using any kind of methods or approach that you can explain here?
Really, yeah. I wouldn't say metrics so much. I would say just kind of good old investigative, like just sleuthing, just asking questions. And you'll find, kind of like plumbing in a house, you'll find that not all of the plumbing has a leak. You kind of go trace around and you go, oh, this one's kind of moist on the other side. So I think the big thing to find out there is always kind of starting with a big, gross look at the thing and go, is everything falling apart, or is it just this, like, say, subset? So you go like, oh, is it this team? Oh, yeah, it is this team. Why is it only this group of 5 that are not, like, oh, hold on a tick. They're communicating well with themselves, but they're not chatting between teams. Why is that? And you go, oh, because this team lead was wanted to be promoted to this and so on. And like, oh, like, this this guy wanted to be say head of engineering, but he was passed over for this. And you go, so they have a cold shoulder between the two of them. Okay, now I'm getting to the bottom of it. And you're not going to know that without asking. Like, like you could talk about putting numbers to things, but again, this is a human endeavor. So numbers it doesn't help.
And how important in this kind of setup, or the issues that you have spotted, are feedback loops playing? I mean, like regular feedback loops that we have.
Well, the thing about it is, you can describe it one way or the other. I feel like having something in the diary is kind of rigid, and not everything happens on, a booked cycle. I think the thing that really works is having, as would be said, like an open door policy, where it's better to be less formal in a lot of ways, where it's not a thing where I've scheduled us for a half hour on, Wednesday, and that's when we're allowed to chat. Like, no, if there's something, I want to know if something is going sideways sooner rather than later. And that's the big thing, is that again, this all goes back to hiring, setting that at the forefront, where everyone understands that, listen, we're going to talk to each other. I don't want anyone feeling like they need to hide. I don't want anyone feeling like this is not something that you can talk about, for fear of being, fired or this or whatever. If you start on that foot, where everyone actually, there's no fear, there's none of that stuff, and everyone really genuinely want to talk, all of it resolves itself before it's even begun.
And you're mentioning here this kind of very delicate topic of talking about everything, or like open communication and then transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, in your opinion, based on your experience, is there something like too much transparency or too much openness?
Definitely. There's a word, it's called professionalism. Like, it's one of those things where if something is, I'll say it to you this way. If you wouldn't want to say it to your nan, like if you wouldn't want to say it to your grandmother, you probably shouldn't be saying it in a professional setting. And that's a really good yardstick of like, maybe you shouldn't talk about this thing. Even if it's something positive, that just may be a little bit too much, And it's not going to be the same for everyone, but I think it's the old adage of like, if it feels wrong in the tummy, if the stomach feels like, ooh, this probably shouldn't do that, go with that instinct and let that be your guide.
Yeah, that's definitely a good advice that I've learned also over the years. Still, there is another aspect to that, and that's the fact that even if you're talking about the business side, there will be definitely at the startup level, and then on the scale up level, there will be lots of issues that CEO or CTO has that they need to communicate. I don't know, any kind of issues with the budget, any kind of issues with the layoffs. Any advice here about how to structure communication around that? Any kind of hints? Should you do it earlier, later? Should you, I don't know, hire somebody and help you with that? Any kind of spot on this?
Yeah, the thing about it is, like a lot of times, like when you deal with external projects like open source, you have, developer relations and whatnot. But I think there's a lot to be said about that as well, because if you talk about like an individual contributor and you think, okay, this guy, he's really, really sharp and they're focused, and they're there because they like figuring out puzzles. Like that's the thing they like to do. And I've said it jokingly, but it's completely serious. It's like, what do you mean power nerds are not the best communicators? They're not. It's just, it's a thing. Those guys are really, really trained in and focused. And to make sure that someone is breaking them out of the shell, that's why you limit team size, and having it to where you only have a handful of maybe just a little bit more. You can't actively manage like 100 people. You can't. There are not enough hours in the day, and it's too many conversations. So having kind of bite-sized groups is really the solution there. And again, that kind of atmosphere of, I do care about you. And it must go with that. It must go with a thing where someone cares about, sanity and well-being, and going like little things that are tip-offs. And everyone have seen this one way or the other. And you go, this guy's been with, this company for 3 years. He's always produced stellar work and all of this stuff. And he just all of a sudden started making like sloppy mistakes, almost like junior mistakes. And then you go, and he stopped talking. And you go, well, we need to fire John. And you go, that's the worst possible move that you can make. And you go, why all of this out of character? It's a simple fix. Ask, what's going on? Is everything okay at home? Because people don't just do odd things like that, and if all of that goes to communication, think about how one small thing, and what if that brings down the morale of the whole team, and then that whole department has tanked. There's too much riding on not being kind, and it just doesn't make any sense to do otherwise.
Right, and working without any kind of human connection, not noticing the other person, and not having any kind of regular connection or communication, that's always the recipe for a disaster, and we have seen it all too many
Definitely.
times. Switching a little bit on actually still on the communication, but actually taking the aspect of the CTO, as we can say.
Sure.
There is always a struggle in the companies when we have a CEO and CTO, when we are talking about discussions and communication between business and technology. And in most of the cases, it's basically translating. So the communication still being able to translate correctly the technical aspects to the business aspects so we can make the right decisions. Any kind of story or hints from your side on how to do it right?
So yeah, I've actually been responsible for patent negotiations on technical products. And this is, if you think you're good at chat, try your metal at this, because when you talk very, very technical ideas to extremely non-technical lawyers, now we're having fun. And you sit there and you go like, okay, so explain to me what a stack trace is and how this is going to go with this, and what is this thing, and they're scribbling down notes. And the key is I speak in metaphor, and I always come up with visuals. And here's the big thing: even if I come up with something brilliant to explain this idea to you and this group, someone may get left behind. And guess what? I can't just go, 4 out of 5 is good enough. You change, you feel the room, you get the pulse, and you go, not everyone have come with me. What about you? I'm seeing kind of like a blank stare, and you go, well, let's try it a different way. And then you re-explain it. You use a different comparison or something until you see all of the cogs click together. And that's the big thing, is like, I've seen the laziness where you go like, oh, I've talked, they've got it. And you go, that's not how this works. You must actually have that empathy to succeed. You must feel the room and bring everyone along.
Are you able to achieve that in the remote setup? We are currently all in the remote setups, or mostly. Is it possible to have this feel of the group and the room?
I'll say it like this. It's kind of like listening to music across a room. You can still hear it, but it's kind of diminished a little bit. But it just kind of requires a little bit more to be great at it. Like tuning into body language and everything like that. Like you go, well, they're not smiling. And that, like, I made a joke, and I know that joke is funny. I've told it at a pub before. You go like, so something's off. And just no, like the big thing about it is it's kind of the feeling of it's okay to be wrong. And if something feels off to you, it is. Like I've actually given that exact phrase is I beat it over the head at a security conference, and the whole thing about it is if it feels wrong, it is wrong.
Probably is, yeah. That's so much thing that I can actually remember also from my experience. It's always the same, and it's always connected with the not only the communication, which is not working because you are not in the same room, but also actually creating issues with the silos. And that's all too well-known story that we are creating silos on the functional. Any kind of examples or the worst stories around the worst case when you have it silos communication?
Yes. So this is ages ago, but advised a company, and this was physical. So like, this wasn't remote. You walk in, you say hello to everyone, like, oh, here's Steve. And goodness, walk in, and they have, like the cubicle set up, and it's fluorescent lights, and just kind of think office space in the worst possible way. And I look around, and I see like literally like a glass box, like it's a wall of glass, like with like a locked door and all of this. And I go, and I see a man walking into it, and I said, what is that? And they're like, oh, like, without saying it the way that they thought it sounded, they said like, oh, well, that's where we keep the programs.
Oh yeah.
No, I cannot make this up if I wanted to. And like they were like under lock and key. So here's the thing: if you had, so this is before the days of DevOps. Like this was just like good old fashioned sysadmins, like systems administrators, just guys that knew, the locations of config files day in, day out. And if they had a problem, there was no, it was an absolute severed phone line. There was no line of communication whatsoever between these people. And it went as badly as you can imagine it did.
Oh yeah.
It was unreal.
Any kind of fast hits on the, if you see this kind of terrible situation, because it's not all, I would say, like a perfect scenario in the world. There will be companies that have those kind of silos by intentionally or not. Any kind of like a quick fix you would apply, or any kind of method that you use to break that silos?
Well, we actually really need to back it up one step. And if you look at it from the outside, like again, think of me as a complete outsider. I come in and, like they've been doing business as usual for 10 years, doesn't matter, whatever it is. And it's kind of like a pebble in the shoe. Someone can walk with this, even if it causes them to have a limp, but they're still technically walking. My role is to go, may I please remove the pebble from the shoe? And the only way I can do that is if they allow me, if they're receptive. And, if I come in and say, this is unhealthy. Like, are you aware that they're not even talking? They don't even know each other's names. And you go, you have one of two outcomes. They can either go, oh my goodness, I didn't even know, like that just kind of oblivious nature, which is easy to have happen. Or you have the other hand where there's no help to be offered, where they go, yep, that's how we do it. So you can only help where help is welcome, and it's just one of those two things. And if they're receptive, then the quick fix is going like, hey, get everyone in a room together and get a keg of beer. We need to have a chat. We need to get people to know each other, because they just don't. And you sort of treat it like a first date with everyone. You need to have a ringleader. You need to have, a court jester, whatever you say. Just in a good restaurant where the chef comes around and chats to everyone and says, how's the meal? You kind of need to treat it like that when it's gone off the rails a bit. I'm not saying like smashing into trees, but it's kind of skipping the tracks.
Right. And then that assumes that the engineering team, especially I'm targeting engineering teams because they are the most, I would say like the most generic group that
problematic.
I would not like to say problematic, right? But the most generic group.
Again, going back to the power node thing, like it's just too easy to go like, what are we doing? Like,
the original assumption is the engineering team is there for solving a technical problems, not to communicate and not to collaborate even, right?
Unfortunately.
If they are known, if you have a group that is known that they are not willing to communicate, or they haven't learned how to communicate in a way that we are describing here, what do you do? Is it the only way, bring them in the one room and start talking about anything, or is there anything else you can do?
The thing about it is we're talking about a hard no. So the possibility of, if someone refuses, I can't make someone, like brie. If they don't like brie, they're like, oh, it's too soft of a cheese. I don't care for it. I can't help, and that's a question of like, do we need to maybe shift this person from one department to the next? Like, say they're great, we really like them, so on and all of that. Like, you don't want to fire anyone. Maybe they need to be doing something different, like going back to technical ideas. Maybe if they've been in development, maybe they should try out operations. Maybe that's a shift that works for them, and maybe that, causes everything to kind of fall into place. But if they're giving you a flat no, there's nothing to be done. That person doesn't fit in the house, So there are ways to kind of play with it, because hopefully you've hired people that you care about, and if you didn't, then there's really no conversation that you can have with me.
And that's a perfect segue to hiring, right? If we want to solve the communication issue, the best case scenario that we can do is to not have a communication issue in the first place. So hire the right people.
Fancy.
How one should care about that, right? I'm a CEO, CTO, or C-level. I want to hire the best people, but I can evaluate the skills. How I evaluate the fit for communication, or is there anything I should look for?
So again, kind of going back to like dating a girl, like you know whether you like her within 12 seconds. There's no two way about that. Like you go like, wow, she's clever, she's beautiful, like this is great. The thing about it is hiring is much the same. And you can say, oh, this person is super skilled and all of that, like they have a great CV. Try this for fun. Take the CV and throw it in the bin. Don't even read it and just get on a call blind with someone and say, tell me about yourself. And like, no, but like not technical stuff. Tell me about you. And when you break down how that feels, you can tell a few things. One, are they good on their feet? Do they want to tell you things? Do they feel comfortable? Are they warm? Maybe they need a moment to kind of break out of things. And again, I picture meeting someone at a conference, or like if you're flying commercial, like on an airplane, and you go, well, oh, hello, how are you? Well, you going to Hawaii as well? And just that sort of thing. You don't know. But the takeaway is how someone makes you feel, how you make them feel, that, duality, that's the building block. And I think a lot of hiring is done completely backwards, where it starts with like the skill set. I deal in Greenfield. Like I've worked on the Rust compiler. I know I deal in executive, but I am weirdly technical as well. And when you talk about knowing how to do the thing, I get it. But that's not where the conversation begins. And the real reason why is because the things that I work on don't exist. A lot of times it's like completely from scratch, and you go like, what are we doing? Something that's never been done before. So there's no guidebook. You don't get to sit down and say, oh, well, let me reference the README. It's not there. And you can't hire someone for a project that has never been created expecting them to have done the job before. And that's the big thing that I think you've seen as well, where you go, yeah, we want someone who's done this exact job. Well, you can't. And also it kind of creates it creates the paradox of, okay, so we want someone who's done the job before. How do they do the job before? Because they've done the job before. But someone at some point didn't have that experience.
Oh yeah.
So
let's hire AI expert with 20 years of experience, because AI is right now cool, right? So that will be the case.
It's the big buzzword.
Oh yeah. I like your take on actually getting the person and checking if you click. But that's solving my issue, like a personal, like I'm hiring and I can communicate with a guy correctly. How I should make sure that he is able to communicate, and the communication will not be a problem with the whole team or the whole organization.
Well, that's why we have you, me, and him chat together, and you just sit. It's one of those, you don't need to get him on a call with the planet. And like, actually, this is something I jokingly but not jokingly talked about on stage of like, I've seen ridiculous things like for C-suite. Like they were like, oh, we're doing like 15 interviews, and I'm going, who are you having him chat to? Like, this is James. He's the night janitor. He likes his mop. Like, why are you having, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, you can have him meet James. He's super duper fun. But that has nothing to do with gauging the fit or anything like that. It's irrelevant. So keeping the calls to 3, like you have your initial, you have like who you're going to be working with, like whether it be the COO or so on, and you figure out if we all get along, and that's it. Like like it's the big thing about it is people have been taught to kind of not trust the instincts of either I like this person or I don't. And they're like, well, what if we drew it out and did like 13 steps? Great. Now no one are having fun.
Right. So does it mean that you're not searching for any kind of red flags or any kind of, people can be not themselves when they have a 30 minutes interview? Are you tackling that?
Sure, but it's not as if someone has just literally walked in off the street and said, "Hi, I'd like to work at your hardware shop." It's not that sort of thing. You at least have someone, like a LinkedIn profile. You at least have like, oh, well, like they've contributed to this open source repository. We can go to like a personal website, and you're doing a little bit of research prior to getting on the phone call with someone. And if you go, oh, this person likes to torture animals. I mean, that's an extreme thing, but like you can read through and get a decent idea of like, we don't even get to have this conversation. And the big thing is, going back to what I said a little bit ago, it's okay to be wrong. You're not going to catch everything. If someone is a pathological liar, they may be good enough to fool you, and you may not know straight away. Guess what? That's okay.
Right.
You're not meant to spot everything, but you do your best to make sure that your instinct tells you, yeah, that feels correct to me. And if you're wrong, guess what? Now you get to learn from it.
Okay. Let me ask you about one thing. If based on your experience,
Sure.
what are the one or two main failures in the hiring process that you see in the companies that you collaborate with? Any kind of examples of the failures or the things that are done really wrong?
What do you mean by favors?
I mean, like failures on the process. So, what's if you have any examples of what you the companies that are doing something exceptionally wrong that we can learn from, and that it's totally not the way you should do. Any kind of examples from your?
So like if I'm brought on to consult or advise a company, and like everything's completely sideways.
Maybe not completely, but those kind of takeaways, like the worst examples that we can learn from.
Mm-hmm. Do you mean for me or for how to teach them?
How to teach them, yeah.
Oh, gotcha. So the thing about it is, when you deal with a group, when you think like, okay, like Talk Startup went to Series A, and like you've hired and this and so on, and you've grown a bit. Well, if the growth is really, really quick, some of that camaraderie is just inevitably lost, and figuring out, well, if there's a problem with this individual, maybe it's because they kind of feel like an outsider. And I think the big thing, if something is going completely wrong, or even a little bit like it's on its way, just being open to having the conversation and not telling someone judgmentally, like, you're doing this wrong. But, I feel like there's a better way to do this. And how you shape your words and how you direct someone, how you teach is everything. Because, yeah, you can scold someone like, they're an unruly child, but that's a horrible way to do it. That phrase of honey catches more flies. You get so much more out of positive reinforcement. And being kind and also being direct, that's the win.
Okay, I buy that. And turning the tables around, if you need to find out any kind of great example, recent example of the approach to hiring when we are talking about the fast scaling company.
So I've seen it done well. And this sort of is a hack, but it's sort of like you have the split between hiring off the street and hiring within circles that you know. And I think, although it can be kind of exclusionary, hiring either by word of mouth, kind of, just old world style of we went down to the village and let me introduce you to a mate. You already have that kind of warm introduction where it's not so cold. Now, the thing is, doing off the street hiring a lot of times is necessary, and I understand that. But I think you sort of need to treat the two differently, not to be more rigid or more diligent, but just maybe a little bit more focused when you're hiring complete strangers, and you get to hire a lot quicker when you're doing it from within the realm, So I think that's a big thing, is relying on network and really trusting in those that, that word of mouth is a huge thing. Asking someone like, yeah, we need someone that work in COBOL. And you go, why? And you go, we've inherited a mainframe for whatever reason. So do you know a COBOL guy? And you go, let me go ask, and it's that kind of thing where all of a sudden you have this guy that's been working on like IBM for the past 27 years and it works out perfectly. Whereas maybe, guys in that arena are not necessarily looking at like job postings online, but you found something because you went through the grapevine. So I think that's a big thing. And it kind of goes back to, being personable and that human connection of, yeah, no, I know a guy.
And when you hire a right person, I'm just jumping from the topic to topic, but I have a structure in my head
Sure, that's
and
fine.
trying to follow that up. You cannot see that, but
Sure.
that's the thing. We're talking about the communication and then hiring. And then
Sure.
when you hire it right and you have the person working,
Sure.
very soon enough, you will have a situation that, especially with the new generation, that the team members will come to you and say like, I'm really demotivated. After 1 year or 2 years, I want to quit or I want
Sure.
to change. Any approach or reaction towards that? Any kind of methods, or should we focus on that and how to tackle that?
Well, the thing about it is, if it's coming as a surprise to someone who's in leadership, I think they're failing. It's one of those. This kind of goes back to the conversation of you can tell morale, you can tell demeanor of like, they're not happy anymore. I need to ask. But if it is out of the blue, yeah, you're going to be a little bit alerted of like, whoa, it's kind of like, again, going back to dating. You go like, if the girl's trying to break up with you and you go like, whoa, I thought we were good. We just got a sofa. What's happening?
Yeah, never seen it coming.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's blindsided, like you have that. But the way to handle it is naturally you're going to kind of feel a little hurt and you go like, well, what am I doing wrong? So the big thing there is, if obviously you want to keep these individuals, ask why, and really just treat it like being a child of like, well, what's the situation? Just let's lay the cards on the table and find out what, if we can come to a solution. We've kind of touched on it of like, if they're doing the same thing day in, day out, and like this isn't software, but like think of people that work in offices that do like data entry. Goodness, that's not fun. And you can only do data entry for so long before someone is going to want to tear their hair out. It's not like, you don't want to move column A to column B for the next 3 years. No one wants to do that. So like, if they're not being challenged, if they're not working on something fun, well, guess what? Figure out something fun for them to work on. Figure out, a different team for them to chat to. Maybe they could be working in sales. They they're really great on a phone call, and they would have never been offered that before, but they think it's super duper fun. Guess what? Now you get to chat to the head of sales, and we'll get you introduced and get you a telephone and see how it works.
Right.
That's the only way to go, is like, if you have someone honest and they really are just like, I'm not feeling this anymore, try something else. Easy.
That's easy to say and harder to do, probably, right? Especially if you
True.
have the domains that you need to tackle and you need to have this boring job covered. But I assume that
Fair.
I know the approach that
No,
you're saying.
and then we can also have conversations about like boring jobs and automation of like, if it's something that is repeatable, well, now you have something of like, okay, let's take this individual that's been doing it for a year or two and they know it inside and out. Guess what? I want you to write this away, and then we'll figure out something else cool for you to work on. Because if it's that mundane, that's not a job for a human. Humans are great at creative thought,
yeah.
bad at rudimentary mathematics. It's just, that's the nature of the beast.
Just to even create that even more abstract, because you can easily fall into talking about the communication and have it as a buzzword and talking about everything. You're putting that structure and giving me the structure correctly, so thanks for that. But how you would approach the aspect of the culture and the values, which is so many times just the description of the 7 words that we have it on the website, right? How do you define the culture and the
You mean the
values?
buzzwords that like people are supposed to pretend to care about and all of that stuff? Yeah, well, the
Yeah,
thing about it is if you don't believe it, they won't either, you know? Like it can't be that copy paste thing exactly like you said. You're like, hold on, where in the about page is like core values? And then it's just buzzword bingo. And it's terrible. So the thing of if you have a page like that, it needs to mean something, you know, because if it has no heartbeat, you already know where this is going. It just serves no purpose.
correct. Um, Maybe it's from the totally different side, but as I was mentioning, based on the bio, you are a father and you are a pilot also, on top of many other things. Any kind of lessons learned that you have taken as a father and the pilot in trying to help leaders to be better CEOs, CTOs?
It's always been within me, but it's definitely been amplified. Again, like going back to like speaking in metaphor and being able to paint the picture. It's really easy to you can tell people that you know are not parents, they don't have children, and they're very kind of locked in. Like the viewpoint is, you know, it's a 30-degree cone. Like this is as much as they have, and it really widens the lens where you get to see everything. And when you teach, it's not always going to go in straight away. Like, you know, if you explain it the way that makes sense to you, it may work when you try and say like, well, like this is how you use a knife. And you go, well, how do I hold the grip like this? And you go, you just do like this. Well, that's a good visual example, but maybe you need to work like, okay, so you take the index finger, you point it this way, the thumb curls this way. And then now you're being challenged because you haven't ever needed to elaborate this word by word, kind of like, you know, the programming joke of like, make me a peanut butter and jam sandwich, and you go, just get the jam, and you like, now you've plunged a knife into the jam, and you go, okay, I need to be a little bit more explicit. So that's the thing that I would say is, you know, that lens widening of not being dedicated to that movement of like, well, it makes sense to me. It's really rigid, you know, and you don't get to that the rigidity does not get to stay. So if anything, it's definitely made me a better teacher. And as far as aviation, you know, we have a few rules of like, takeoff is optional, landing is mandatory. You know, like once,
Good one.
one, I appreciate it. Once you're up, guess what? Gravity has, it has words to say with you. And, you know, you can talk about planning, you can talk about this. And like one of the first things that you do before you even get in an airplane, you do a pre-flight. You walk around the aircraft. You make sure leading edges are there. You make sure the fuel doesn't have water in it. You make sure that, you know, belts are tight and not going to give out. You make sure that the oil doesn't sputter on the cowling when you crank up the engine. And it's a really good metaphor for sizing everything up. You know, you can rush into everything, and I know I make things sound easy in a lot of ways. Of like, oh, you just do that, but the thing that makes me complicated is that I deal in the intangibles. You know, that whole thing of like that nuance and how do you feel about this and how could you tell that he was unhappy with that? Like kind of the questions that you were asking, and I kind of, again, I've always been good at it, but to get great at it, it requires a lot of focus. And all of that stuff of like, you know, treat someone like when you meet a professional, they didn't just wake up and like look like that. They figured out how to put themselves together, how to speak. You know, even if you talk technically, or like you talk like a construction worker, they know mix ratios of concrete and this and that and the other, and they didn't get that overnight. You know, so having that planning, that put together, and kind of being built rock solid, you don't want to get in an airplane and go, should have checked the fuel.
Right. But it's not easy to do when you have so many priorities, especially if you are in a high moving scale up or the startup, right? There is so many things to tackle. and communication or thinking about the building the checklist or the processes is the very last thing, right?
Sure.
But you,
Well,
yeah,
go ahead.
I wanted to just connect that because you are right now, correct me if I'm wrong, right? The Imperfectus is how old company or how old idea? It's
Um, it's been brewing for a while, but very, very, very young. So we've been actually traveling in the States, figuring out where to set up camp, and wouldn't set up a business any place that I wouldn't be happy to be. And yeah, but I think on paper, technically 2 years, something in
yeah,
there.
with a huge experience that you have already under your head, and the question from my side is because
Mhm.
you're advising companies that are scaling up and you're also building your own company. Any kind
Mhm.
of lessons learned that you have already from this endeavor?
It's a huge one, and like if you picture me as like the old timey performers with the spinning plates on sticks, like I always I only take on as many plates as I can without dropping one. And the big thing there is being able to say no. It's a really human thing to want to please everyone, to want to go, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. I'll do this. I'll do this. I haven't slept in 3 days. What am I doing? And it's that thing, the one, I want to make everyone happy. And you don't get to make everyone happy. And if something is not beneficial for you, it's not going to be beneficial for anyone if you take that on, if you're not able to commit to it, if you're not happy with it. And being able to say no, I think that's the biggest one.
That's a good one. That's a good one. And it's
Thank you.
connected with balance and the focus that you have, right?
Jeez, super much.
Uh, I always like this concept of asking the person that I'm talking with about the like a top 2 or 3 takeaways if we're talking about the communication, hiring, or broadly based on your experience of helping other companies. If you need to place it on a billboard and have like a top 2 or top 3 hints or lessons learned, what would that be?
Oh goodness. Like, first and foremost, hire someone fun. Oh my goodness. Hire someone who's fun. Like, great, we get it. You're super clever and all of that, but you're rude and you're boring and I can't stand you. Like, hire someone who's fun. Because again, going back to the if we're looking at all of this and it's never been done before, well, then who cares? I need to teach you. We need to figure it out together. It's going to sort itself out. But if they're passionate, if they're clever and they're kind, then the circle is complete. I cannot emphasize enough. Hire someone fun. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I would
As
actually
far as
buy
the
that.
rest,
This, yeah,
though,
I would buy that
yeah,
boat.
I appreciate it because it's a big one. Again, there are too many things to do, and if it's a grind, if no one are having fun working together, well, guess what? Not only is it going to be miserable, but the product isn't going to be good. Like, you're going to have corners cut. You're going to, like, everything comes down to that. But I think the big thing is also figuring out what works for your company, because what I can kind of prescribe for company A may not work exactly for company B. Maybe it's too specific of an industry. Fine. That you do need to be a little bit weirder with how you sort talent and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, if that needs to be done, fine. But I think having kindness as the forefront, it paves the way for everything else, and then you get into the nuance.
Hmm. Yeah, I always like to say that when, at least if we are talking about the startups and the idea of the building it from the scratch, we are always saying that it's a human-centric organization which is trying to find a predictable business model, and we are always focusing on this predictable business model. But human-centric organization assumes that you will be building that with other humans, so the communication is critical. Having somebody who you want to work
Again,
with
you're
is a
going to be
critical.
chatting to these people 8 hours a
Yeah.
day, and you don't like them. Oh, that sounds like a bad idea.
Oh, for sure, for sure. That's definitely one that I would bring on the billboard. Any other?
Fair enough. Nothing like springs to mind. I mean, we've kind of touched on a bunch of different topics. I don't know if I have another tagline, but I feel like the first one's solid
Yeah,
enough.
It's a solid. That was a plenty. I was having so much deep dive questions around the communication, but
Sure.
the answers that you've provided give me at least good enough framework that I can take and analyze and take something fundamentally better from it. Definitely.
I should hope so.
But trying to not create too long conversation as we have the form that we want to keep it. I would just ask you first the very last question. Is there anything that we have skipped in the discussion that you would like to underline, or any kind of cool new stuff that you would like to pinpoint around your business that you are building right now?
Yeah, well, we've kind of chatted about the multitude of branches and whatnot. I think most relevant for this conversation is definitely the Sage. And again, we really play in kind of in any industry that you can imagine, whether it be technology, food and beverage. We talk blockchain. It doesn't matter. We have hands in everything. So it's that I again, that one is the one where we can assist. The envelope, that's still in play as far as building. Again, it's been sort of the journey of like where to set up again, because I didn't want to start a charter in a place that we were like not satisfied with that. So that's paperwork that's still being sorted out now, which is fun. We've actually done a bit of shopping, looking at aircraft. And then the market, which is a little bit hush hush at the moment, but that's luxury foods, and some of these things will be like competition grade. I'll say it that way, which I won't give away all the secrets, but I'm really, really, really excited about that. So that's one of those, when we get organic certification done, we'll be ready to kind of unleash that on the world.
We'll be looking forward to see
Well,
example or
I'm
the
glad
launch
to
of
hear
that. Yeah.
that. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, as far as anyone looking for assistance, come and find us at the Sage. We are happy to have a chat.
And for the audience, how they can reach you, how they can reach Sage.
So the website, Imperfektus with a K, IMPERFEKTUS.com. And yeah, if you're looking for assistance as far as executive advisory or fractional work, the email address is thesage@imperfektus.com. Come. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on anything.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Meade, it was
Just look for the crown.
Oh yeah, the logo is there. Thank you, Meade. It was a pleasure and a great discussion here. So thank you for your
It's
inputs.
absolutely wonderful.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for listening.
Indeed.
So don't forget to find us on the social media. We are on Spotify, Apple, and all the major platforms. So if you want to drop us any notes, comments, feel free to do that. And to all of you, thank you very much for listening, and stay tuned and waiting for a new episode. Thank you very much.